We are live. Welcome to CloudTalk. It is August 6th. It is the first Thursday in August. I am Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocialFans on the Twitters. You are tuning into a CloudTalk Twitter chat. It used to be a Google Hangout, but we are blabbing today. As always, I am joined by my co-host, which usually flashes back and forth, but now you get both of us on the screen at once. How are you, Daniel Newman?
I love it. The problem is now when the other person is talking, we have to be a little bit more cognizant of what we're doing because you're not just down in the corner anymore, getting like barely noticed. Now, if we're over there, if I'm fixing my hair or picking my nose, everybody's going to see it. So I got to be really, really careful to pay attention to not do that. But I love trying new things. I think, we're the FOMO squad. I'm less FOMO than you are, but, part of the Csuite Media Group play is we like to launch new shows, new concepts, new topics, new ideas. And today is a trifecta of new things. So why don't you kick them off and tell them what's going to happen today on CloudTalk?
Sure, yeah. It's 3 new things today. So the first one is the most exciting one. We have a new sponsor, a new partner on our show. We have to thank the guys over at Pivot Point. PivotPoint.io has been sponsoring our show for a couple months now. And we now are welcoming in a new sponsor. The wonderful people at SAP are sponsoring this show now. So you guys will see the logo is in there. SAP is now the sponsor. Really, I think it's kudos to SAP. They wanted to be a part of it. They believe in the CloudTalk. They've been guests. They've been tweeting. They've been using the hashtag for almost a year now on this chat. And they said, hey, we want to support you guys. We don't need to have our own chat on the same topic. We want to support, advocate for you guys. So we're gonna join up. So we're excited to team with SAP, and we also are launching a new format because on our show, Social Business Hour, we decided to go topic-based for each month, and it was super successful. So we're going to do the same thing here on CloudTalk. So this entire month is going to be around digital transformation. So we are doing 3 new things. SAP, we are welcoming as our new sponsor. We are doing a monthly theme, which is now digital transformation. And the third new thing is, instead of this being on a Google Hangout where we've been for almost a year, we are using Blab.IM. And of course, we are streaming it on Meerkat and Periscope here for the audiences that are watching it on those live streaming apps. But it's all about embracing change. SAP is doing it with us. We're doing it with new platforms, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, this is super cool, Brian. I'm stoked. Other than the distraction of you getting so many high fives, it's just going nonstop. So I got to say, I like this, though, a little better than I like the hearts. I don't know why, but the hearts never really did it for me. I guess it must be the Y chromosome or something. It always felt a little mushy for a guy like me. But no, I think this is really, really exciting. And we've for a long time had our friends at IBM Pivot Point as a sponsor, and they're still here. So we want to thank you guys. Welcome, SAP. And then I want to get beyond all the sponsor blah, 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 because really, and what we love about the sponsors we have is they really don't ask us to talk sponsorships. What they really ask us to do is talk about cool stuff, talk about technology, talk about cloud, digital transformation. And I love this topic. And, people might say, well, why are you talking about digital transformation on a show that's called CloudTalk? And really at the heart of it, right, what businesses are going through right now is massive transformation, cloud being one of them, is how are they bringing their business from whatever it was before technology became the epicenter of our walking, breathing lives to today, where really we're engaging with technology around the clock, whether we're using it directly for our business, whether we're using it to market our businesses, whether we're using it for personal branding of ourselves and the people who work for our companies. All these things impact the business. So digital transformation is really super relevant to cloud because one of the ways that a business takes itself from where it is to where it's going is the utilization of cloud. So over the next month, like I said, we're going to really be hammering this home, talking topics, bringing in some new guests. And this Blab thing's pretty cool because now it really does make the guest thing a little bit easier, so long as we keep it to 4 total people. And we're also very excited from you guys in the community of hearing what you think about this new platform, new show, and this topic of digital transformation. So, Brian, you want to kick them off and get question 1 going so our blabbers and tweeters can start talking?
For those that are first time on Blab or you're watching this on Periscope, Meerkat, we're using the hashtag CloudTalk. So a Twitter chat is not about who you follow. It's about the glue of the hashtag. So that hashtag is really what we gather this community around. So we're going to post questions out to Twitter. Our amazing community manager, Kristen Cardos, is running the CloudTalk handle, and we'll be posting questions out there for everybody to answer. So you can reply back on Twitter. So if you have to open a new tab and just listen to us in the background. We have faces for radio, so we don't mind if you're just listening to us, not watching us here. So instead of commenting in the Blab comments right now, post your questions and answers on Twitter. We'll be engaging. We're going to bring in some of your tweets into the conversation. That's really what it's all about. So question number one that we're going to throw out there as we're talking about this digital transformation, and really today's topic is mapping a digital journey. Question number one, how has the customer journey changed with the emergence of digital? And I would love to hear kind of, Daniel, you jump into that, and then we'll kind of go a little bit deeper.
Well, I think the best thing that you can do is always start by telling a story. So you and I are kids, we're pager-wearing millennials, Brian. We always talk about what we grew up with. Well, my first job outside of like refereeing and umpiring sports games was I worked as a clerk at a movie store. A store was called Hobson Video. I was the front desk. I did the front desk, scanned people in, checked out their movie, $3 a night rentals, right? Then, it became a Blockbuster. And so we lived our lives renting movies at Blockbusters, and we rented DVDs at Blockbusters. And the reason I'm kind of telling this story is because for people out there that maybe don't even really understand what digital transformation is. So what happened is one day, all of a sudden, we started getting this new service called Netflix. And with Netflix, you could order DVDs. And the DVDs, you would go online, you'd pick the movie you want, and it came to your door. And everybody thought, hey, that's pretty disruptive. If nothing else, that's pretty convenient, right? We can pick a DVD for the night. It'll be in your mail the next day. You watch it. They send you an envelope. You put it in the mail. You send it back. Wow, that's really, really cool. That wasn't really disruption. Now, people thought it was disruption. I mean, that was kind of a slight disruption or a new way to do things that everyone was really, really comfortable with. But in the background, what was going on is Netflix had a whole new idea about how to do business. They had this whole new idea that with technology, with internet, with throughput and bandwidth, we could actually give people the ability to watch anything we have in our library right off of a server, right out of the cloud, right out of a data center. And we can truly disrupt business by saying, hey, you're going to no longer actually go to the web and pick a movie and get a DVD and watch it. You're just going to go on your screen, on your Xbox Live, on your PS3, on any device you have. You're going to select an app, and you're going to watch the movies that you want to watch or the shows you want to watch right there. And so what was going on is Netflix was delivering a current business model in a new way, but they were really developing the future, which is what I think about when I think of digital transformation disruption. Is they were taking a model of business that we do today, and they were giving us a whole new way to do business tomorrow. And it was super disruptive. And in the end of the exercise, right, what ended up happening is, where is Blockbuster today?
Crickets. The non-existent. No, and I think that's a great way of doing it. And I actually use, I was trying to explain why I don't call it a technology disruption, right? And I like to use the technology disruption like this, is we think about the phone very easily, right? The phone used to be something that was attached to our house. Technology allowed us to have it on us, right, as a mobile phone. But the digital disruption came with Skype, where I don't even need a physical hardware anymore. I'm able to use something that is SaaS-based, that is on my computer, then I can call using a digital interface, right? And I think the digital transformation is huge, and something that cannot be underestimated right now, and that is the customer is smart. The customer has access to data and information like they've never had before. And so back to this question number one, how has the customer journey changed with the emergence of digital? The customer is smarter. When you go into Best Buy, the Best Buy person more than likely doesn't know more than you or doesn't have to know more than you. You can look up Amazon reviews. You can watch demos of a product. You can be up to date with like the latest press release that came out about the new software that's going to be on your laptop 10 minutes ago. So the customer is no longer stupid. So in this digital transformation stage, I think a lot of it is, let's map out where the digital customer gets their information from. Because let's be honest, if they're going online and buying your product and researching your product, isn't the content you want to create going to educate them in that process? Where before you might have gone to a billboard and said, buy the brand new iPhone. And you just had a picture of the iPhone, and that was the education. Well, now I'm going to go over there and I'm going to compare the iPhone to the Note, to the Galaxy S6. So for you as an iPhone, as the iPhone supplier, now you want to educate them on all of the differences. And I know, Daniel, you as one of the brightest minds in content marketing, in my opinion, you do a great job of understanding the line between selling and educating when it comes to content. And I think that is a huge change in the customer journey, is you have to educate them with content now because they're going to digital to educate themselves.
Right. So some of the math is that there was 5,000 advertisements as an average day for a consumer on the internet. So between what you see in your Facebook stream, between the 3 or 4 ads that we laid out early in our presentation, between just the product placement within native content on television shows, we are seeing so many advertisements. So as customers, right, the way we consume now is we're looking for new sources of information, new sources of trust. So, as always, and it's never changed, word of mouth marketing is still super powerful, but the way people get word of mouth marketing has evolved in a huge way. We saw disruption today, right? Google plus Hangouts were disrupted today by Blab. This literally happened today. The way our show happened, right? The majority of our interaction took place for a long time on Twitter. And then you introduced Periscope and you introduced Meerkat. And today we're introducing Blab. And here we are. So we'll probably see our show and the results, the Twitter results, get slightly disrupted in terms of the amount of engagement we're going to get there. Because here, all of a sudden, everyone's like, well, why do I need to go over there and chat with you when I can have you guys, the audience, the other listeners in real time to engage in a conversation that's, let's face it, easier, it's simpler. So it's everywhere. And this is how customer journeys are being impacted by a couple things. One is information, and 2, you can't minimize it, Brian, is experience. So here we are on a new tool, getting a new experience and going, this experience is amazing. And
that's, if I think the brands that get it don't focus on creating a new product or every new shiny object. They focus on how can I create a better experience for my customer. The experience is the disruption, because if you focus on creating a great experience, it doesn't matter what disruptions around it as long as the experience is the goal at the end. And I think companies that look at new technology and go, well, what is this new technology doing for me? That's not the right answer. The right path is, how can I embrace this new technology to create a better experience for my customer? And I think some brands get it. I mean, we're lucky. SAP and IBM are 2 of the largest brands out there in the world, and they're sponsoring this show because they get the experience. They understand that the experience is important. You have to focus on the experience. And I hope more companies do that as we jump in there. So when, Daniel, I want to jump into question 2. So you want to throw question 2 out there to?
Yeah, I'll let you go first because I get to go first. I steal all the thunder, and then you're like, yeah, here's the last 3 talking points. So let's do this. So what must companies do? So let's get away from the customer side, talk about the brand side. What must companies and brands do to map a journey to specific business models, offerings, and customers?
I think first thing they have to do is they have to audit and assess themselves in a non-biased way. And as someone that I introduce myself as a change evangelist, too often we look at change and we're assessing all the things that we're doing wrong and we blame ourselves. We're afraid to admit that we've been doing it wrong, or maybe it needs to change. And here's the thing. You haven't been doing it wrong to get where you're at today, because if you embrace change and you look at these things as saying, because I was doing it all this way, it allowed me to get to where I am today so that I can change. That is the key. So I think the first step in really a company embracing digital and migrating is self-awareness. They have to look at self-awareness. If it's auditing it with a third party, that's fine. But it's really saying, hey, why are we making all of our employees work 9 to 5? Why are we not getting rid of some of this overhead, and let's use cloud computing, let's use SaaS-based, let them work from home, and now maybe they're going to work 8 a.m. to 6:30 because the commute time that they were wasting for no good reason to come sit inside of a desk, is now changed. And I think all of that comes back to self-awareness, and it includes self-awareness with the customers. How are we relating with the customers? What is the digital experience of our customer? When a customer comes to our website, are we pitching them the same thing as a prospect? Are they getting a better experience when they come to our website? How do we embrace that? And I think self-awareness is the number one step for getting digital disruption, from turning it from massive chaos into massive new experiences.
Yeah, I'm going to give you another thing. I think you do mention self-awareness, and that is super important. And one of the self-awareness avenues is actually being willing to change away from the way you do things and use new technologies to actually do things better. And I'll give you the example here. So in 2008 and through 2010, I was CEO of a company, United Visual, and we were going from a premise-based CRM solution called Act to a new cloud-based one called NetSuite. Sorry, it's been a few years. So NetSuite. And so here's how we modeled it out. We got all the executives in the room. We modeled everything we were doing in the way we did it. And then we said, hey, okay, NetSuite, turn our old system into a new system. So we want to take our old way of doing things on premise to a new way of doing things in the cloud, but we want to do them the exact same way we always did them. So we just want them to be put into the cloud. And what I mean by this is really the digital journey, and we talked about experiences, is not thinking that way. It's got to be the end of thinking that way. And it's actually engaging customers, engaging communities, engaging the people who are going to be users of your products, and saying, in a world where there are no rules and there are no limitations, how would we do this? In a world where technology can enable us anything, but it just depends on what we're willing to pay for it and how we're willing to design it, is what could our solution look like? How could a workflow look if we didn't have any barriers? And so the old way is what caused us to, so Blockbuster, going back to my original story, started doing a mail service of DVDs, right? They started mailing DVDs. They offered a service for $1 a month less than Netflix. And their strategic model was to copy innovation, small innovation, and offer it for a penny less and see what they could do to use their current customer base and brand to sell. In the background, though, what Netflix is doing is saying, you guys build your mail outlet, okay? We'll mail DVDs. But in the meantime, we're in the data center here building massive storage, creating contracts. Oh, by the way, we're producing our own content. We're going to do our own shows, and we're going to completely put you on your head. So they created a mail solution, and Netflix just completely vaporized them in the process of it. And I think when you talk about what companies must do to map a journey, they must actually explore what's possible. What is possible if we knock down all the boundaries to how business can be done with our company? And then let's figure out how to help technology do it, because ultimately it's going to be culture and people that allow it to happen. But it's the culture and the people that see there's new possibilities.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to bring in, for those that are just tuning in, this is a Twitter chat. This is a Twitter chat hangout, but now it's a Twitter chat blab. So if you want to join in the conversation and answer some of these questions that we're talking about, use the hashtag CloudTalk on Twitter and put in your comments and questions. And I'm going to bring in a couple of those comments from Twitter right now. Brian Yanish, a big fan of ours, we're a big fan of his because he's in the community. He said, multi-channel content marketing. I tell my clients, would you only call people that use AT&T? And that's a really good comment, because, by segmenting something and saying that you're only using, people that are doing an experience one way, you are missing out in the global experience. And I wanted to bring in another one that I thought was really important, that I thought, Jessica said, it begins with education. Engage or just listen in free discussions like these. Ask questions, listen, learn, and go. And I think maybe that's something we can really talk about is, I don't think enough brands listen or learn. And I'm going to give shout out to Blab team right now. The CEO and the CTO of Blab, Victor and Furkan, are both in here right now listening to this chat. They jumped in my very first Blab. And you know what? They get the importance of experience. The CEO jumped in and was singing a song on guitar on one of the Blabs that I was using this technology, because what he said was, if he just got on here and pitched his product, would I remember him? Would I remember this product? Instead, he created an experience. And that experience doesn't have to be crazy new. Let's talk about Uber. Is calling a car mind-blowing? We've hailed taxi cabs since day one. They did that with horse and buggy. What Uber did was they refined the experience. They made it a better experience for you, the user. The fact that I don't have to get a receipt from a handwritten cabbie that has grease on his hands from his hamburger, that it can automatically be uploaded and my American Express can be updated, that is a better experience for me, the user, as well as a better experience for the driver, a better experience for my company. In the last company I worked for, IO, you were not allowed to use anything but Uber, because of the streamlined experience it provided for our collections and our reporting process. How crazy is that? And it wasn't true disruption, because all they did is they refined the experience. They didn't blow it up and make you all of a sudden have to, you ordered cars that landed out of the sky. Like, you still went out and hailed a car. You just did it with a different experience. I think that is where kind of these brands kind of forget or, kind of go a different way. And so for question 3, and I want to jump in question 3 here, because a lot of people are talking about sales and marketing and social media. What role does sales, social media, and marketing play in the digital journey? Because I think we've talked about cloud, we've talked about the importance of technology, we've talked about the customer, but what role does sales? Because I think we sometimes forget that if you don't empower sales with better information, they can never create a better customer journey because they're the ones with all the touch points. So Daniel, I'm curious, and make sure you guys out there on Twitter, question 3 is out there. Go ahead and answer question 3 with the hashtag CloudTalk, and I'll bring some of your comments out here as well.
Well, I challenge everybody out there that's listening to this is how do you buy something today as opposed to how did you buy something 5 years ago? How did you buy something 5 years ago opposed to how did you buy 10 years before that? You know, I always try to find things that are relatable. And I think that's really the most important thing that brands think about experiences is storytelling and creating something that's relatable to their buyer. So, you know, I look at something like the buyer's journey of purchasing a car, right? 10 years ago, and Daniel Pink talks about this, I believe it's in Drive, but he talks about parity, right? So 10 to 15 years ago, before there was so much content, so much information, there was a lack of parity between a buyer and a seller. The seller had all the information, the buyer had little information. They would go into a car dealership and they would try to get as much information as possible, but the dealer held the power. They knew everything from pricing to the credit situations to offers to what people had paid for cars in the past, right? Now you can go onto an application like TrueCar and you can see the last 50 people in your zip code that bought the same car as you with the same feature and what they paid for it. So the role of sales now you could say has changed a little bit, but you know that's a consumer example. But in a B2B example, think of a tech, think of the purchase of a CRM system. Nowadays you've got demos that people can log in and set up themselves and test drive. You've got videos, you've got webinars, you've got on-demand content, you've got Blabs, Google Hangouts, YouTube. You've got a million new ways for people to consume information, content, get organized in their brain. And that's where Forrester's research that talked about people are 70+% of the way done with a buyer's journey before they'll even pick up the phone and call a vendor. So the digital journey has massively impacted the way we're buying today, and that's across all industries.
I couldn't agree more. And here's a great example. So you guys can see the cardboard boxes over my shoulder. So I'm moving into my new house. I was buying a trash can yesterday for my house. And this is a trash can, a physical offline trash can. I went to 3 different websites and Amazon to read reviews on trash cans, went to Target and purchased it, but I educated myself completely on which trash can I wanted, the size, which trash bags I had to go to, and that's a trash can. So, I mean, is the trash can industry creating content to educate people on digital on how you buy something that you put your trash in? I don't know if that is the case, but I can tell you what, I knew what trash can, why, and the trash can I wanted to buy. And I think that's an example that's pretty interesting when you think about it in the whole scale of things, where we sometimes think about, oh, of course you're going to research a laptop. Of course you're going to research a car. It's a major purchase decision. This was a $40 purchase, but I went through a pretty good detailed research before I actually made my decision. So I think this is where collaboration in the C-suite, as well as collaboration amongst departments, sales, social media, marketing, and technology, the CIO, they must be together hand in hand to understand the importance of the digital journey. Because if marketing isn't creating great content, if social media isn't sharing that great content or directing people to landing pages where they can actually have these conversations, if the sales team doesn't understand the content that's available, or the sales team doesn't understand the customer well enough because they haven't been supplied the data well enough, that is all breakdowns that ultimately the customer pays. And especially the digital customer pays. I think that is true. And Marketing Hits said content marketing has a ton of noise online. I think it's because we're still trying to sell online rather than educate and provide true great value and then let the selling do for itself. And that's kind of just my opinion on where marketing is kind of going wrong in this whole scheme of things.
So we talked a little bit about the sales. Let's talk a little bit about the social media side of things and how that's changing the journey. So social media is basically breaking down every barrier there is between human connection. So there's no reason now, I would bet, Brian, that you know people on at least 6 continents at this point. You probably talk to people on 5 continents via video this week. Right, and you probably communicate via one channel or another in 6 continents on a daily basis. And you know, if that last one wasn't an Arctic tundra, you would be on that one too. So my point is, so every day you're actually communicating with people around the world. The possibilities for us to gain insights into companies we'd want to work with, products that are good, they are creating great user experiences, companies that have support and customer support. So that's a huge thing. So you talk about the social media role. Here's a role of social media. How quickly today can people complain about something that's a bad experience and get it out to the world in a capacity that you could never do, even 10 years ago. How many times have you heard somebody say, I'm going to tweet about this? Or you hear someone complaining at the counter and be like, I'm going on Yelp, I'm going on Twitter, I'm going to start telling the world that you suck. And if you're a business, right, some of you in your heart wants to be like, do whatever. But today it's like, you really can't do that. You can't just do whatever. You have to know the fact that you have no idea who that person might be, what type of reach they have, what kind of audience, what kind of impact they can have on your business. And today, if you don't take customer support and service serious and using social media to listen for both opportunities to bring new customers in and opportunities to support the customers you already have, you're missing a huge opportunity. So a lot of people are thinking social media, I want to use it to sell. I want to use it to share links. I want to use it to share PDFs and files and content that people can utilize to buy more of my stuff. I think of it completely the opposite way. I want to use social media first and foremost to talk to my customers, talk to my communities, engage people who can give me insights that helps me to better provide any sort of services to the customers I currently have and the customers who I someday hope to have.
And I'm going to bring in a question. Our awesome community manager, Kristen Cardos, brought in a question from Twitter. So just remember, if you are participating in this on Blab or you're watching on Periscope or Meerkat, use the hashtag CloudTalk on Twitter, and we're going to bring your question in. And Josh McCormick had a great question. Do you see companies resisting getting online? And I'm going to be bold right here and say, if you're not willing to get online, you're not going to be a business very long. And I don't care what industry you're in. I challenge people all the time to give me an industry that doesn't need a online presence. That means a landing page, a website, a Facebook page. You need to be easy to be found, because if you are out of sight, out of mind, you're soon to be out of business. And I truly, truly believe that, especially in a digital space, because it doesn't matter if it's a mortuary. It doesn't matter if it's a construction company. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've had people been throwing these out at me because I challenge people for a while now. I say, hey, give me an industry that shouldn't use Periscope. And I'm building use cases out across everything from architecture to someone yesterday said, hey, I paint nudist paintings. How could I use a video platform, right? Nudist paintings have a website. I think digital transformation.
That's the whole internet, Brian. That's like
they're the one.
That's just
don't listen to Al Gore. The
upper class of the porn on the internet.
Yeah, they're paying for our internet right now, right? That's the. But I mean, what's your answer, Daniel? Because mine's very in your face. There is no excuse not to have a digital footprint for no matter your business. It's honestly no excuse if you are still employed. So if you haven't retired, there is no excuse for you not to have a digital footprint. Because I got in this debate with my father-in-law last night. He's 72, one of the nicest people in the world. He's beat cancer twice, and he said, "Brian, do I need one of those LinkedIn things? Because I keep getting people inviting me to a LinkedIn." And I was like, well, I don't think you need LinkedIn. You're not going back into the workforce. You don't need to be found on digital. And most of your first impressions aren't happening online. But for anyone who's not retired, from that age down to, we can argue the beginning, a digital footprint is a must, because that's where your first impression happens. That's where people are judging and making their perception. So what's your answer to that, Daniel?
Well, I do think you're right that there's a universal value to being on digital. I don't think there's any company or individual for that matter that couldn't benefit or accelerate their career, their visibility in some way through the use of the internet. I think there are ups and downsides, and there's real issues that people need to be cognizant of: privacy issues, security issues, data breach issues. When your company's out there, what you want to choose to expose and what type of information you want to put out that could hurt and harm your company. If you're not going to be able to actively manage and listen to your presences, that's a problem, because, you could go out there and set up a Facebook page and people could be talking to you and complaining, and if you're not paying attention. So I would only caveat, Brian, to what you're saying is I would say everybody should be there, but being there isn't only really about having like a flag in the ground. It would be like buying a lot of land and then sticking the sign in the ground and say you own it and then saying, I'll be back in 2 years. The fact is now is you have to build the house on it. You've got to decorate the rooms. You've got to cook in the kitchen. You've got to mow your grass, and I'm using all these analogies, but my point is like, you've really got to not only have your footprint, but you got to be there and be present. And that's where the FOMO and challenges do come in. Is it's about knowing all the different platforms that are available, all the different ways they can be used, who's doing it, how's it being managed, what value is it creating? Because I still do say this back at the very end of the day, Brian, is every platform that we decide to use to promote Csuite Media Group, Brian Fanzo, Dan Newman, our books, our companies, the brands that we do influencer work for, is is that the best channel to create the most value for that person at that time? So what I mean is, like, when is Periscope the right channel? When is Twitter the right channel? When is LinkedIn the right channel? When is a blog the right channel? When is YouTube the right channel? And that's where companies really run into the wall, is that they're so overwhelmed that they do nothing. So my favorite ad is, I asked everybody, Brian, for a long time, I used to go, who's your biggest competitors? And they would always name 3 other companies in their industry. And I go, you know what? I'm going to give you your 2 biggest competitors and your potential third. And it's, your biggest competitors don't know, your next biggest competitors do nothing, and your third biggest competitor is don't care. So don't know, do nothing, and don't care, because if you don't know what those platforms are and you don't know how to use them, you can't do anything about it. And ultimately, just spraying crap out there, most people will not care about what you're doing online. So you've got to overcome all that stuff. But in the end, Brian, you're still right. So you're absolutely right, but there's just a whole bunch more work that has to take place in the background.
Couldn't agree more. And I believe brands that get this, they focus on being great in a few places and listening everywhere. Great in a few places, listening everywhere, because how do you know where your audience is if you're not listening everywhere? And for me, that's the key driver here, is you have to understand your customer, understand your audience, which starts by listening. And so listen everywhere. Deploy listening software. I love all kinds of listening software, from the Radian 6 to the Zoomps to the BuzzSumos to the Mention to the BrandWatch. You can deploy a tool and listen everywhere, because do you do business intelligence only in the places that you know about, or do you try to listen everywhere to gain business intelligence so you can predict how other competitors are doing things maybe outside of the norm, right? You would have never, the taxi industry would have never saw Uber coming because it came through the tech funnel and SaaS-based cloud. But if you're listening everywhere and you're focusing on being great where your audience is, you can do great things on digital. I think too many brands try to be great everywhere and not listen enough. Be great in a few places. Create a Facebook page. Have a website landing page. Direct people to where your primary engagement place is, and then embrace it. And that starts by empowering your customers with cloud-based solutions, SaaS-based solutions like customer service programs that embed social media. The fact that when you go to your web and you hit contact me, it doesn't say fax me something. It actually says, chat or tweet me, or, because that's where the breakdown happens. When hey, I have a website, your website has no contact information and the only number is a fax machine. Give me a break. Like, I think that's the thing. And I think Daniel, I think we both can agree on that.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what Brian Yarnish said about, choosing the right places to be and be where your customers are. And that's the one thing I think a lot of us need to think about is your customers may not be on digital right now for your particular business, but they're on digital collectively. So you think about something like using paid Facebook ads, right? Everyone's like, well, I'm a B2B. Why would I use that? Well, ultimately, right, it goes back to our friend Brian Kramer at H2H, or what I used to say about P2P, is that everybody that's on these platforms is either a former or a current employee of a company. And a lot of them are buyers at companies that make decisions to buy. And you know what? They're more interested in spending more time on a platform like a Facebook, where they are living their lives in a social realm, than they are spending time on those more dedicated business channels. So you may actually reach more people who could do a business buying decision to create awareness, create a relationship, engagement on those social-sided platforms that'll ultimately lead them back to wanting to learn more about your company. And I've seen it because I've compared it. I've done LinkedIn ads versus Facebook ads, and I might not make friends with any of the LinkedIn gurus when I say this, but I got a lot more people to a website for a B2B company using Facebook ads than I could using LinkedIn ads. Maybe I'm not as good at it, but the bottom line is I just think there's more people hanging out on Facebook who actually own businesses, run businesses, and are interested in connecting with things that are interesting to them, which they have all the algorithms for. So let me jump into question 4. We're going to take this from a super social kind of digital talk to a little bit more techie. So I got to warn you out there, if you're just into the social, we're going to geek out for a few minutes here. But let's talk about cloud migration. This is Cloud Talk. So what role does cloud migration or companies moving to the cloud play in mapping a new digital experience?
So I think this is another one that comes into where we might be a little bit bold here, but if you're not currently planning, or maybe let's not even say currently, if you haven't already figured out a plan to get you into the cloud, you're behind the curve, no matter what your industry is. I'm not saying that every industry and every computer software and every mainframe will get to the cloud. You have to have a strategy on how you migrate to the cloud, because the scale, the visibility, the options are there. I was talking about this platform Blab, and I was joking because I said, hey, what's the max bandwidth that you've tested on how many users could join this platform? And he was like, well, we're still trying to testing. I'm like, well, I'm sure AWS Cloud is a big fan of yours. because I know that's where this is hosting. They're hosting this on AWS. They have latency. They don't have to have 3,000 servers sitting in their basement waiting for all of a sudden this to go to 1,000 viewers, not 35 viewers that we have now, because they have the latency available to them in the cloud. So migrating to the cloud to support a digital experience is essential, but you cannot do an all or nothing. There's no easy button. There's no switch that says all of our computers are now in the cloud. And the cloud doesn't exist in the sky. Let's clarify that. And so for me, to answer this question, what role does cloud migration play? It is essential. Cloud migration is key. And I know we tweeted it out a little bit ago, but SAP, our sponsor, has a white paper out there that talks about building the digital organization and what it takes to build the digital organization. And one of the things they talk about in there is cloud migration and getting to the cloud. And so it doesn't start by saying everything has to be in the cloud. But in my opinion, cloud migration starts by understanding what the cloud offers and what things can live there, what new applications can be purchased in the cloud, and then how do you migrate to the cloud?
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point. And every business out there, from the smallest to the largest, right? So I've never run a large enterprise, but I've run companies, from mid-market, mid-size, all the way down to when I started Csuite at one employee. And cloud has had a role in every company I've run. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is while total cloud adoption is still kind of in its infancy. And even though the vast majority of CEOs today believe cloud is going to be transformational in their businesses, I think it's only about 35% of companies are really using cloud to the volume of their liking, where they really feel like they're getting a lot of value out of it. But what do I mean by this? So for a small business, it might be something as simple as going to a accounting system like a QuickBooks or a small tool set for CRM, or running some apps for collaboration. Like I said, if you're running Blab right now, cloud is in this background. Now for you, it might be a web app, but the whole reason Blab is in the market and it got to market so quickly is their ability to stand it up on AWS, or their ability to stand it up in the cloud, right? So you start off with those small solutions, and then you start amping up at all the different things that are possible. If you're in the tech space, what apps are you running? How are you allowing for your employees to be mobile and connect mobile? You've got tons of security and data issues today. Companies, just because you're ignorant to what compliance means doesn't mean you don't have to be compliant. So nowadays, you've got responsibilities to store every company email for a period of time. You cannot delete information. You have to be responsible and manage all the correspondences that go within the emails of your company. So if there's illegal activities going on, I watched a pitch at a CompTIA event where there's a company now that actually can listen into employee email boxes without spying. But what it could actually do is understand from the context if people are potentially looking to leave your company, steal or breach information and data, if people are committing any sort of crimes or doing anything that would be putting the company in a position of liability. And that's amazing to me. Because, for me, I keep thinking about, like, how do companies keep track of all the data that they're responsible for? And with Internet of Things, and just to talk a little bit and geek out even a little bit further, all the devices now that we're going to be wearing, sharing, using, that are connecting us into our environment, the amount of data there is insurmountable. So companies are responsible for all of that, and cloud is going to be the tool that's going to allow us to have data management tools, privacy management tools, security management tools, and then also, just like I said, running your basic day-to-days, accounting, CRM, customer relationships, support, social media. I would ask the question: how does cloud migration not play a role in the new journey? Like, where does it not be part of it?
And on Twitter, a couple of people said, Jim McCloyd said, cloud is about mobility. We're all on the go, and we need our content at our fingertips. And I think mobility is important. And then Shannon said one, and I love Shannon's here. She said, cloud migration and digital, which cloud? So many solutions which make it easy and quick to integrate with a buyer journey. And I think maybe that's where we come back to this education, is that you first have to understand what the cloud is, but you have to understand what solutions are available for you, right? Like, Avnet is a company that was a sponsor of CloudTalk previously, and good friends of ours, Tim Fitzgerald. And Tim Fitzgerald talks about it a lot, that most of the customers come to them asking for one cloud solution because it's the only one they know of. And then whenever Avnet presents all of their cloud solutions back to them, the person's like, oh my God, we have all of these options. So I think education on the types of cloud solutions is also extremely important in the digital journey, because it's not just about SaaS. I mean, you can do infrastructure as a service. You can actually take your entire data center and give that responsibility to someone else. Or maybe, hey, I already have a data center footprint, but I need someone else to migrate the platform level up. And I know this sounds really geeky, but it's all about trust and relinquishing control. And I know, Daniel, you and I focus on this a lot. If you're in business to do something, why don't you focus on that business and not focus on running IT and focus on running digital footprint? Why don't you allow the parties that should be responsible for managing uptime, allow them to be experts in that rather than you doing it? So why don't you go ask an SAP or an IBM or an AWS or a Rackspace or an IO and let them manage the infrastructure side rather than you trying to do it, and your business is, I'll give a shout out to Funky Fairy. And Funky Fairy is someone that's they do embroidery for clothes. They shouldn't bother themselves managing an infrastructure on data center if they're doing embroidering and clothes in the UK. And I think that's something we can't underestimate.
And that was one of your 5,000 short form ads for running and using an MSP in your life. Because there's a lot of point for that. Like, if you're not technical, why are you doing the technology in your business? I was at that event, that ChannelCon event for CompTIA, and they said 30+% of companies now don't even have a dedicated IT person, but they are running their IT in-house using non-technical IT staff. So that's like some person that's got no training in the background, Brian, is actually responsible for choosing their clouds, choosing their software, managing their antivirus and security. And it's like an admin person or someone in accounting that happened to take a couple courses on Windows Server at some point in the last 10 years. And today there's really no need for it. If you're a small business, I mean, we've stood up our entire company on cloud apps, cloud tools, cloud capable mobile applications and whatnot. And I don't mean to keep harping on this, but I don't want to waste my time playing IT guy. So my biggest IT concern on my day-to-day is my ISP up? Is my ISP up? Because if my ISP is not up, then I can't do anything. All my work is dependent on me having internet services. Other than that, I don't really want or need to be part of the IT equation. So I think we have to look at that and say, why are we trying to be IT companies when really we're trying to be embroidery companies? Really, we're trying to be media companies. Really, we're trying to be marketing agencies. We'll use the tools, but we don't necessarily need to stand them up and manage them. So let's get into a conversation about that, about where this starts from, Brian, and go into the fifth question, which is about the C-suite, because you and I, we love to beat up the C-suite. So let's ask this: who in the C-suite is responsible for the digital journey of the customer and or for the business?
No, this is a good one. And I saw a friend of the show, Mitch Jackson, say, using tech to provide better client service and relationships. And I think the C-suite is a good example of one that needs to start focusing on understanding the customer better. The distance between the C-suite and the customer is too great right now. The C-suite is too disconnected from what the true customer is doing. And because of digital, because of social, because of all of this information out there, there is no excuse for C-suite not to be better educated on what their customer is doing, what the community is talking about, what their competitors are doing. I mean, there's social listening, there's data listening, there's digital migration, there's all these things that are truly underneath what is going on right now in your customer journey. And understanding that, I think, is essential. And I know a lot of people a couple of people on Periscope said, you need to hire the right fit and the skill and let those people do their job. And Daniel, you brought up some really great points. Like, let's just let them do their business. And I think a CEO, a CIO, they have to do their own self-awareness. So for me, who in the C-suite? I think it's about collaboration in the C-suite. It's not about one individual role. It's about, hey, as a C-suite as a whole, when we're having a board meeting, when we're working together, what is our digital assets? How are we using them? And how are we sharing data? Sharing data is the power. And too many right now hold on to their data in the C-suite, which means the CIO, the CMO, the CEO, the CFO, the CXO, all of them are holding on to their own individual data that has to do with the customer rather than sharing it amongst themselves.
Yeah, and I think this question is a leading question because I don't think there's like a hard stop answer like the CMO is responsible. I think the paradigm of changing the company on its head to be customer-led, meaning so customer-led strategies has to be sort of at the core of what a company's entire vision of the digital journey is. So this goes kind of back to question one about how the digital journey has changed is, are we doing a customer-led business strategy or are we doing a management-led customer strategy? Meaning who's making the decision though? So for every Steve Jobs, and rest in peace, that is out there that could actually better decide what the consumer wanted than the consumer themselves are a whole bunch of businesses that need to actually ask their customers what they want. In our business, right? So on our agency side, V3B, we've actually dedicated our C-suite to being customer facing. So a lot of companies, what they do is they start delegating the customer facing side of our businesses. But what we've done is we said, we'll delegate the operation side of our business, all the back end channels, and we'll let the people that are best to do that stuff, that's our cloud, right? Our cloud operate functionally, and we'll make sure that we manage that relationship with the consumers in so many different channels, whether that's a phone channel, a social channel, a content channel. We are having conversations on a day-to-day basis with our customers. And what I think is in the C-suite is the C-suite, that self-awareness to know that what's going to keep a customer loyal to a brand is the relationship that you create and the way you make them feel and the experience they have every time they engage with your brand needs to be the focus rather than the focus on creating this hierarchical way of avoiding intimate contact between a CEO and their employees and their customers. So, I look at it back, it's sort of that inside out approach, right? The CEO has the corner office in the highest level of the building. They shoot up the elevator, they go there, they do their work. They only talk to the really important people in their assistant, then they shoot back down out their private elevators, get back in their limos, and they drive home. But really, if you look at the building, it should look more like the Pentagon. It should be around, and that CEO and C-suite should be in the very middle of it, working in a cubicle, talking directly to all the people. And then on the outside, you should give private offices to all the worker bees that actually have stuff they have to get done, so that work is getting done. And in the meantime, that communication that takes place between employees and customers is right in the epicenter of that everyday experience that someone has when they go to work.
No, and I agree completely. And on Twitter, Steve Massey said, the biggest day in and out challenge is businesses siloed, our biggest barrier to engaging in the customer journey. And I think there's two things there, siloed and lack of trust. Right now, we are missing trust. We're missing trust in our employees. We're missing trust in our customers that they know what the hell they want. I mean, part of the problem is we want to listen. We want to listen to our customer, yet when they give us answers, they give us data, or they give us feedback, we go, oh, that customer is stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. Wrong. The customer is smart. We need to trust the customer. We need to trust our own employees. We need to trust the systems that are in place. And we need to, not only that, but we need to, with that trust, hey, let's share the data amongst each other and break down those silos. Or our friend Olivier Blanchard, who co-wrote the book with you recently, right there. You can plug your book there, Daniel Newman, The Ultimate Field Guide for Digital Program Management. I love that Olivier says, hey, don't focus on breaking down silos. Start by bridging silos. And I think Olivier says that really poignantly because right now silos are hard. And if you don't have trust and you're not starting from the ground up, if you're not a brand new startup, breaking silos is like, you might as well force change. It's never going to happen. But if you break silos and implement trust, then you can make it happen.
What I say, the customer is not always right, but the customer is always the customer. And, you said something about that stupid customer. No, they're not the customer is right. Well, the fact is it really doesn't matter, is what I've always said to employees in the past, is it really doesn't matter if the customer is right, because if that's the way they feel, then you have to deal with that, with the repercussions of your decisions to treat them like they're stupid or treat them like they're not important or treat them like they're not worthy. And in today, so it goes back to that social conversation where they can smash you at any time, in any way, on any platform that they want. You just have to realize when you treat them poorly, regardless of right, wrong, or indifferent, that you are going to probably create collateral damage for your company that will be unrepairable. Now, so it goes back to the other side, is that when you choose to be a customer-first organization, what you really choose to do is you say, we don't know if the customer is always right, but we want to make sure that the first thing we do is we take care of them. Because word of mouth marketing, right? Word of mouth marketing is the number one growth strategy of businesses. So I'll go back, make a plug. When I did some research for it was my second book, The New Rules of Customer Engagement, I actually found out that the number one growth strategy for small businesses worldwide was word of mouth marketing. It was the number one way that businesses grew. And this isn't like a, oh my God moment. But here's the funny thing. 98% of businesses found that their number one way that they grew revenue, 98% of small, mid-sized companies found that the way they grew revenue is word of mouth marketing. Brian, what guess of that 98% of businesses do you think have a strategy to execute for word of mouth marketing?
Not very many. And if they do, they don't really understand what word of mouth marketing is. What, 3%?
3% of the companies actually had a strategy to maximize word of mouth marketing. So think about how digital could be your champion for word of mouth marketing. Digital is your jetliner. Digital is your rocket ship to communicate to all customers every time. Like I've told companies along the way, digital journey is this. What questions is one customer asking you that probably 500 other customers would want to know that you could benefit by doing a Periscope, writing a blog, creating a training course, getting on social media and talking to people, building an app for that, building a mobile application for iTunes, whatever it is that you could just educate people all the time. So it basically goes back to saying, are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you customer focused first? And then back to where we started, putting the digital journey, putting the technology in its place to help facilitate that for all those that you do talk to and so many customers or people that could be customers that you don't talk to.
No, I love that. It's so true. I mean, not only are they not always right, but they always a customer. And with what happens when you have no customers, you have no business. So it's pretty simple when it comes that way. And I wanted to bring in a comment from, remember, if you guys are watching or just tuning in, hashtag CloudTalk on Twitter. You can get your comments put in here. And Mila's page said, unfortunately, it takes mid-level rogue people to prove the value to the C-suite. And I think maybe that's my message. Stop firing your change agents. Start promoting and celebrating what they're doing when they're driving change. Too often, your change agent is successful. You celebrate them, and then you stick them in a silo and say, we can't let that person change again because, oh, my God, they might change more stuff. We need to start celebrating, and it starts with management. I think too often we're incentivizing management in a wrong way, where a manager has no reason to break a silo because nowhere in their bonus structure does it say work with the sales team if you're in marketing. It says empower the sales team, but nowhere does it say share data with the sales team, right? And
I've talked to
broken.
Yeah, it just made me think of that. I talked to a customer way back, and I don't want to say any names, but the company basically, we were doing some white papers, and there was employees that wanted to pen these white papers or be involved in the creation. And the company was very, very nervous about putting out thought leadership into the market under the name of some of their top, say, salespeople or top project people, because they thought that, that was just going to open the door to more visibility to other companies to potentially hire them away. And I said, okay, I can understand that. I said, but the problem is it goes back to that old analogy that took place between the CEO and the CFO. When the CFO walks into the CEO's office and he says, what if we train all of our people and then they leave? And then the CEO responds and he says, well, what if we don't and they stay? And that's kind of that same thing is like when you kind of shut people in and you tell them they can't promote, they can't support themselves, they can't grow individually, they can only grow for the company, then what you end up doing, right, is you end up pushing them out the door. So yeah, you may temporarily protect your asset or temporarily, put your company in a better position. But over the long term, what you end up doing is probably damaging a relationship with an employee, minimizing their ability to grow. So where it really has to come into this digital journey and the employee side of this whole thing is creating that win-win environment. How do we create an environment where an employee can grow, but the work they're doing in digital or the work they're doing in personal branding benefits equally both the company and the person so that everyone grows together? Because in that environment, an employee is going to be happy and excited, and the company is going to be benefiting through new awareness, new customers, new relationships. But it is a really, really fine line. And Brian, you and I know this as well as anybody, with us working together, we have a lot of things where we're out there branding our companies, and we have a lot of things where we're out there branding ourselves. And the only thing we need to always make sure we do is create those conduits between when we're branding ourselves, that our thought leadership is a cultural reflection of the companies that we are building together.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the key is that link. And I also love Mitch Jackson's comment. He said, sometimes it's okay to even fire the customer who doesn't fit. It'll save you a ton of time and energy over the long term. And so we talk about hiring and firing for culture fit internally. I think that's also important to remember about that when you're dealing with your customers. So I want to throw in last question because we have about 5 minutes left. Thank you, everybody who's watching this. Thank you, SAP, our sponsor. What technologies will change the digital journey of 2016? So I'm curious, Daniel, from your point of view, it can be technologies that are existing today, it can be technologies that existed 10 years ago that we're going to use differently. But I'm curious, from your perspective, what technologies are going to change that digital journey in the future?
Well, 2016 is tricky because we're going into a really narrow window, but I think that provides a ton of relevance to our audience right now. So I'm going to go back to something I talked about earlier. I think contextualization of big data and tools to do it. It's going to become more mainstream that we are all going to have the opportunity to go into big text. So they call it big data, but another term I've recently learned is called big text. And that's because about 80% of the world's information is in text form, or it's in a form that is in a that is not, basically organized data. So they call it structured data or unstructured. So almost all of our data is unstructured today. We're going to have better ways to be able to extrapolate insights from data that isn't organized in an easy way. So I think that's the first thing. And it started in these last couple of years with things like social listening, but it's going to go even further where it's going to be more automatic, more filtered, managed, where we can then basically be pulling specific insights out of platforms like Blab here that we could utilize to help sell, understand sentiment, understand how people feel. So that would be my number one. And then my number two is that we're going to see a return of interest in privacy. We're not going to see we're not going to see a minimization of new apps and people signing up and using them, but we're going to see companies in this spirit of transparency starting to be more clear about what they're doing with your data. And they're going to start creating more opportunities for people to opt into services and use them in a private way. And maybe that's a new monetization path for people. But I think there is a return. There has been a lot of visibility to the fact that there's no privacy on the web. And I think there are people that would like to have some privacy and be able to choose. And like enterprises, for instance, doing video, as I said earlier on this, a company like Blab could benefit a ton by having an enterprise version of this where the consumer or the user could own their data rather than Blab owning their data and, give that privacy. So now you have a kick-ass platform for collaboration, but the company is still meeting all of their guidelines. Or if you're in like healthcare or something, you're meeting HIPAA and different, legal and regulatory items that they have to meet.
Well, I think that's super important. I mean, and here's the thing. Companies no longer can use the idea like they don't realize that we're using their data. If you're using something for free, or even if you're paying for it and you're storing their data, the company's storing your data, they have your data, you're paying with your data. So now I think you brought up a great point, Daniel. It's now about educating people on what you're using that data for. Privacy sometimes isn't about control rather than education. We need to educate them on saying, hey, we're using your data to better serve you better content in the right column of your feed, because on Facebook, I want to see what I just navigated on Amazon. We need to start educating people. And I think the digital, this is a funny question because it says what technologies. Part of the technologies is like Internet of Things. Like I love the Internet of Things. I embrace that. I believe Internet of Things is a powerful weapon. But I think what it's going to be about is about, hey, Internet of Things allows us to gather this data. Like beacon technology. I absolutely love beacon technology, not because it's beacon technology, but because it can create a better customer experience. When I'm walking by a brick and mortar store, and let's say I signed up for this notification, it says, hey, Brian, remember, you looked at this product at Amazon, and it's available for you at this little boutique store that you just walked by. Oh, nice. Now my customer experience doesn't have to be when I get home and go, oh, crap, I didn't go to that store because I forgot to go buy something. Like if I go to Home Depot, it should tell me, for me, this is where I'm looking at it from a data perspective is, hey, Brian, this is the stuff that you looked and researches and you've needed on your phone or on your device or on your Internet of Things weapon, and you should go purchase it now. It shouldn't be wait till I get home and realize I forgot the milk, right? I mean, it's now about, hey, how can I serve up this data? How can I serve this thing? So I think data, I think Internet of Things, but I also think video. You cannot underestimate video. This right here, what we're doing now, we're taking something that was text-based, that was only, and you know what? The CEO, Daniel, here, I'm going to challenge you. The CEO said, and for Blab, he said, people are going to do more blabbing than blogging in a few years. That is a crazy, mind-blowing, it's, hey, I like CEOs that reach for the stars. But in his point, he believes more people are going to focus on video collaboration and video education than traditional creating content, in the blog, in quote-unquote, the old way of blogging.
Well, I think it's video plus context. And I think, the Blab CEO, and I know they're on this call or might be on this call, so I'm not calling them out, but John Chambers predicted something very similar to this like 20 years ago. John Chambers bought into video conferencing in a big way. He bought into video, and obviously I'm just giving an example. That was Cisco. They're not necessarily friends of some of our other sponsors in here, but it is an important thing to point out. Video has been long called out as something that was going to grow in a huge way. And we are now starting to see that. Bandwidth throughput has made that entirely possible. So I think you're right. I think we are going to see a massive growth of video adoption from people that aren't just FOMO, from people that are just looking for ways to communicate quickly with customers. And tools like this are going to empower and enable that. And I'll give you one more, and we got to jump off this thing because we've met our hour. And the milk meter is not paying us anymore, so we can't. No, I'm just kidding. Is sensors. So you talked about beacons, and I just want to say sensors. I think everything we do and in everything we connect with, we're going to have sensors tied to us, and that sensor data will be utilized for everything like super valuable stuff like healthcare, to better understanding how we utilize technology and things, how we drive our cars, how we live our lives, how we live in our houses. I learned this the other day at an IoT session at that ChannelCon. That did you know that there's a microphone in your Nest? So it's interesting, but you can talk to your Nest, right? So technically you could tell it your temperature you want to set it to. Well, what else could you potentially do with that microphone? We're talking about the upsides and the downsides of those sensors and those devices, and the fact that people could hack your Nest and listen to your home. It's very, very weird. But the point is we are going to see sensors everywhere, but we are going to see a heightened and increased interest in security, privacy, and management of data. And I love what you call about this fear of privacy and stuff. It's an education thing. So what is that, trust tools technology, or that you always talk about? So we need to teach people what this is really all about.
Training, then tools, not the other way around.
Trust training tools. And then the fourth T is technology, because we all love technology. So it's 12:02. You got 2 extra minutes free. We'll send you the bill for our new trifecta. I love this, Brian. Blab, very cool. So congratulations to the guys that started this. I think we'll be back. We got some more shows we can do here too. We'll record. I said earlier, Brian, we should record our Smack Talk podcast here later on Blab. Why not, right? They'll send us the MP3, MP4. So I want to thank SAP. We got to get that paper out there. Check it out. It's very, very exciting. And of course, our friends at IBM Pivot Point. Brian, why don't you take them on?
Sure, and I want to pull in one last comment, one last answer, because I thought this was great. Bob Egan on Twitter said, enabling tech that will manifest culture change, including virtual reality and small data, and then he put in parentheses, intelligence in context and mobility. I think that's exciting. I'm like, give me all of that. I think that's the exciting technology that enables great change. Thank you to our sponsor. This is our first show. This entire month is going to be dedicated to digital transformation. We're going to be talking about digital transformation for the entire month of August. We're going to put up, Kristen Carlos, our awesome community manager, is going to get a Spotify together of this entire thing to recap this. We're going to have the video up in YouTube. If you missed any of this content, make sure you guys go to millennialceo.com/CloudTalk. millennialceo.com/CloudTalk. We'll have this video up here. We'll have some of the Twitter conversation up here. We'll have a link to the article that we've been talking about. We love it. It's all about embracing technology. Can't believe it, Daniel. We've had many Google Hangouts that failed and glitched across the way. We've been using that for 2 years. We had no, knock on wood, glitches to this today on Blab. So I agree, we'll be doing this again. So thank you, SAP. Thank you, community that is out there. Thank you, pivotpoint.io. And we will see you next week.